Let me switch and then I'll reset. This switch is key because the finance front page this morning says Parliament is expected to vote today on the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the Excise Duty and Excise Tax Amendment Bill, as well as the Growth and Sustainability Bill. Now, the understanding we have is that there are a number of prior actions for this staff level agreement that we got in December from the IMF. One of which was the PURC's tariff adjustment, the other being the release of the Auditor General's report on COVID spending. And then we are told there's also the onboarding of GET Fund, DACF, and the Road Fund onto GIFME. So those three appear to have been done. So this is the fourth one. Now, how much are we expected to get from these taxes? And why is the government doing this at this time? The Deputy Minister for Finance, the Honorable Abena Osei Asare, she's also the MP for Etiwa East. She's joining us to give us some quick comments on the critical nature of these three bills and also address possible concerns about the effect of one of them. A lot of concerns about the Growth and Sustainability Levy. Good morning, Honorable Abena. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Bernard, and thanks for having me.
By the way, how are you and how is the economy? Are we on course?
Oh, Bernard, I'm well, and I believe you're also well by God's grace. And the economy, we are still working hard to make sure we get it back on track.
Wonderful.
So I can say that positively, things are moving steadily, and we hope that with the conclusion of the rest of the prior action, which includes these important revenue bills, we can move to the next stage and then make some progress on the IMF negotiations, as well as bringing the economy back on track.
So the final reported that we've done three prior actions. The PURC have adjusted the tariffs, the COVID expenditure report is out, and that the DACF and GET Fund and Road Fund have been onboarded to GIFME. Are these things correct?
Bernard, yes, there are certain things that we agreed on with the IMF as part of our post-COVID-19 program for economic growth. And it's in line with that. One is to aggressively mobilize domestic revenue and also streamline and rationalize our expenditures. We believe that by bringing these statutory funds on board on the GIFME, we will be looking at the expenditures, and we'll also be bringing about more efficiency in the way they utilize the funds that are brought to them. And so we believe that it is part of the whole agenda of the PCPEG, which is the Post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth. And you mentioned the three revenue bills that are currently with Parliament. The first point on the agenda is to aggressively mobilize domestic revenue. And as part of that, government is using enforcing compliance, using administrative measures, as well as coming up with new taxes that we believe will help us, one, raise the needed revenue and also support us in our growth. And coming back to where we were before the COVID-19 hit and the Russian-Ukraine war that has also had taken a toll on the recovery of the economy as well. So the first one, Bernard, is the Growth and Sustainability Levy Bill. If this bill should come into force, it will repeal the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. There's a similar act called the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, and it's the same thing. It's in this same vein that we are introducing the Growth and Sustainability Levy. But this time we are including other categories, and so but it's the same thing as the NFSL, but we are including other categories. With this new one, the first is we had on the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, there were businesses who were paying 5% of their profit before tax to government to support. This bill came into effect somewhere in 2015 or so, and it was to support the economy and revive the economy and to get it back on track. And so it is in this same vein that we are doing this, but we are including this time the extractive industry. In the previous bill, the extractive industry wasn't part of it. So the existing industry or the existing entities that were part of it already paying the 5% of their profit before tax on this bill. And we are including another band of 2.5% for those who do not fall within the the existing 5% category and the extractive industry. And then we have up to 1% of production for the extractive industry. We believe that we have used this in the past to help revive the economy. And so it's more of a burden sharing sort of to help government raise the needed revenue to support our PCPEC agenda and also to implement the budget to see the economy get back on track.
So just to clarify,
2.2 billion. Mm-hmm. We believe that this revenue bill, if passed, will give us about 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, which will help in our revenue mobilization agenda.
I noticed 3 categories for this law, this tax. The first category has 15 companies. Are you saying that this 5% before profit before tax that affected these 15 was already there in the National Stabilization Levy, and that the only new thing with this is that you are adding category B, which is the mining companies and upstream oil and gas? They are 1% of gross production. And then the category C.
Previously, there were 9 entities in that the 5%. We are adding 6 more.
6 more. Okay.
6 more to the 5% category. Mm-hmm. And this includes the communication towers, the upstream services, and a couple of others. So there were 9.
There were 9. So it's now 15.
And then we are adding 6 more to this category. And we have the extractive industry, the mining and gas, and the petroleum. And that is 1% of production. Mm-hmm. So in between the 5% and the 1%, the entities that do not fall in between the 5% category and the 1% category, which is the extractive industry, also have to do 2.5%.
So that's the rest of us, all of us, media companies, all the people who are not in the first 15 and who are not mines and oil companies. We are paying 2.5% of profit before tax.
Yes, Bernard, this is to support the economy get back on track, and for government to also be able to implement implement its agenda of supporting the vulnerable who have been hit very hard by the COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war. In as much as we are raising revenue, we also need to look at the vulnerable who have been hit very hard. And these are the revenues that we believe if we raise, we can use some to support.
But Honorable, you've already raised the VAT from 15%. You added a 2.5% to the VAT. In fact, the effective VAT rate, when we calculate it, is now 21.9% already.
The VAT rate is 15%. Bernard, I mean, the VAT rate currently is 15%.
No, when you decouple, yes, that's because you've decoupled it. But when you add the GET fund of 2.5, NHR of 2.5, and the COVID, and the COVID health of 1%, that when you add that 6%,
COVID-19 is not VAT, and the others are not VAT. Those that are VAT is 15%. So
but so I'm saying that you've increased the VAT rate by 2.5%. There's also NHIL of 2.5. There's GET fund of 2.5. There's COVID of 1. So I'm talking about a purchase. If I go and buy a phone, I'm paying almost 21.9% on the phone already.
In taxes.
This is a consumption tax. And yes?
Yes, I understand your concern. But as a country, we need to mobilize our own domestic revenue to pursue our own national development agenda. And so these are some of the things that we believe we can do to raise the needed revenue. As we speak, when you compare the revenue we raise to our GDP, it is still way below the West African target of around 15 to 18%. We are still doing 13%. So there is more that we believe we can do. And government is not only focusing on increasing taxes, government is also using administrative measures as well as enforcing compliance. So we believe that with all the support that we are getting from you as in the media, and Ghana and Ghanaians as a whole, we can get there. But it's a tough route.
Right. Fair enough. There's a concern. There's a concern about some of the 6 you've added to the 11 to make it to the 9 to make it 15. For example, e-money issuers have been included in this. Specialized deposit-taking institutions have also been included. Companies registered by SEC have been included. Now, these companies will say they've already suffered. E-money issuers will say they're already suffering from e-levy. These specialized deposit-taking institutions and the SEC companies, the haircut have already hit their business operations. Some of them, because of the exposure to government and the debt restructuring, are going to even have impaired capital, to now add a 5% profit before tax to these guys. I mean, it's almost like, Charlie, we are going to milk you of everything you have. So if I'm running any of these companies, I'll say, what does government want me to do now?
Bernard, that is not the case. In this country which we live, I mean, we need to collect taxes to support, I mean, all of us. Others, I mean, in terms of the fingers, they are not all equal. So others will need a little more, but government takes a little more from those who are able, and then be able to use it to service them or to provide for those who, in one way or the other, are not able to provide. So this is the situation where we find ourselves. And Bernard, I think that government is pursuing the national development agenda for all and sundry. All of us who are paying taxes or those not paying taxes, we get to, use good roads. We get to go to school. We get to, go to hospitals. And so it is for all of us. So at this moment, government is saying, I need that support to enable me continue with these things. So if it is that we are taking a little more from those who are able, I think we have to support government in this agenda. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but it is necessary to enable us.
I obviously know that this tax has been there for banks, non-banking, insurance, telcos, breweries, inspection, evaluation. We understand. I'm just sort of pointing out the new guys, like the e-money issuers. And I'm speaking not because they've told me anything. I'm coming. No, hold on. I'm giving you the context for the question that e-money issuers are within the fintech community and they're already suffering from e-levy. Specialized deposit-taking institutions and SEC-regulated companies have already started experiencing. In fact, a lot of them don't know how they're going to be mobilized deposits around this period because many customers have been hit by the mark-to-market losses that were announced, and then also the debt exchange and its effects. So I'm just saying that if you look at the context of where we are today, these two groups can say that it's a very difficult, and that when this is passed, it will start from 31st March. So it means that's just next week. So, and I do understand that there's a sunset clause for these taxes. But my question is that if you look at the timing of this, is this not a bit callous? I mean,
Bernard, if Parliament had passed this, it would have started in January. Yes, but Bernard, we are all feeling the pinch. But this is where we also need to burden share. And so that is where we find ourselves now. Others, in trying times, we're able to do that for the whole of this country. And we are asking that let us support in this regard to make sure we get the needed revenue. And like I said, if there's a sunset clause, it's from 2023, 2024 to 2025. After 2025, we are hoping that by that time, the economy would have, gotten back to its previous state. And then this act or this bill would have elapsed by that time after 2025.
I also noticed that all other entities not falling within category A or B will get 2.5% of profit before tax to be taxed. So it means that all companies, irrespective of size, because I do know that in the past you are distinguished between small business, medium size, and large companies. But from the way I see the category C, you just said all other entities not falling, because you've also said in the past as a government that you are interested in protecting small businesses. So there are even this tax relief for startups and things. So am I to take category C to include every business?
Bernard, like I mentioned before, if you don't find yourself in the first two, that's the extractive industry and then the 5% ban, yes, you have in all other entities fall within the 2.5. But Bernard, look at the name is growth and sustainability. We need that growth to be able to sustain businesses in this country. So without that growth, even businesses, it will be difficult for businesses to thrive. So this is where we are now, and we need that support.
The growth, the basic, at least for me, what I remember from Bani Aku's accounts, if you tax a company, he will lay off people, because he feels like it will affect his profit. So if a company realizes that there's too much statutories to pay, he will reduce his employment. And when you reduce employment, you are going to rather affect growth. So I actually think the name is ironic. What you're doing is you're raising government revenue, and I have no problem with that. 4 billion overall to help government do what it has to do. But the effect on private sector, all these companies may decide to lay people off or reduce their employment to cope with the pressure that they are getting from lower sales. Now, has government done that analysis to be sure that the job losses that these increased taxes will occasion will not rather stifle growth? Do you get? Because growth is not just a function of government revenue. If companies are not employing people, they won't grow. The economy cannot grow, because if we are unemployed and we are all sitting in the house, how do we get productive to grow the economy?
Yes, Bernard. But this is something that we have to do, in as much as increasing taxes does not necessarily mean companies are going to lay workers off. Maybe they are also going to look within themselves and see how best they can cut other operations other than employees off. But let us look at the bigger picture. We want to do this in the interest of the whole nation. And it is a form of burden sharing that let's all contribute something to make our nation better than what it is now. And Bernard, you agree with me that when things were good, we were all enjoying it. We were all in this country. When things were moving well, inflation was below 10%, the Citi dollar depreciation was way below 6%. We all benefited from this. And this is where we find ourselves as a result of the slow recovery of the economy from the shocks of COVID-19, as well as the Russian-Ukraine war effect. So this is where we are, and we are asking that support us in this regard. It's for 3 years. We are hoping that within that 3 years, we will do everything possible to make sure we bring the economy back on track. And then businesses will return to, things will return to normal. And then we can continue to enjoy the kind of atmosphere and successes that we were all enjoying.
Now, we understand the need for revenue, but the question is the approach chosen progressive? I'll give you an example. Again, theoretically, we know that property taxes are possibly the most progressive of all taxes, because people at the higher property ladder arguably have more income than those who don't have property. So there's been a lot of conversation about collecting property tax. In fact, when the individual bondholders met government, they recommended that if you even collected they gave a certain calculation that you could get about 2 billion if you got 50% of household paying at least 1,000 cedis per property, using the property estimation they did. My question is, what is the government's budget for 2023 on property tax? How much are you going to get? You say you are getting 4 billion from these 3 new taxes. All the properties in Ghana that don't pay property tax, how much is government estimating it can get if it decides to enforce the regulation of property tax?
Okay, Bernard, we have done something in that regard, and this time government is not sitting at the center to collect these revenues. Government has, through GRA, has partnered with the municipals, metropolitans, and district assemblies. And so what government is doing is to help them collect their taxes at those places and leave 60% of those monies at the various places, and only 40% comes to the center. And government is hoping that this will boost development in the areas, in the municipal assemblies and metropolitan as well. When you look in the budget for 2023, I think, I don't have my budget ready with me, but I think we put in 400 million. That is what is coming to the center. And because we are hoping that 60% of that will go to the various DCs, and they will use it for their development there. This is the first time we are partnering with the assemblies directly and GRA, and so we didn't want to be. But
have they given you an amount they are hoping to get from this first year?
So that is what I'm saying, that in the budget we put in 400 million, which is different from the usual. Okay. Yes, and so I think that is on top of my head. That's what I think we put in. But 60% of those monies are going to be at the centers, the municipals, the metropolitans, and the district assemblies, and they are going to use it. It will not come to the center. They are going to use it for development. This is the first time we are embarking on this partnership, and so we didn't want to be over ambitious about the amount that we're going to collect. So by mid-year, we would know how much we have collected, and see the way forward on what else we should do to boost the collection.
There's a strong view that the government has not led by example when it says we should share burden, and has not cut anywhere near as much as we expect it to do. In fact, when I look through the bondholders' proposals to government, which they estimated that you could save over 80 billion through what they call fiscal adjustments, expenditure cuts. Let me. Okay, I can give you the right figure.
I just want you to confirm the figure. 80 billion.
Hold on, I'm calculating it. Yes, 83.5 billion, and this document was signed off by both Mr. Senyo Hosi and Mr. Samuel Ackhurst, Director of TDMD at your ministry.
Treasury. Yes.
And I'm telling you before God, the figure they got was 83.5 billion cedis. In fact, I can refer you to some of the things. They grouped it into three. So, and Mr. Ake's signature is there. I know his signature. So they said, yes, if the government does fiscal adjustments, they mentioned the revenue side. There were about 12 different revenue measures. And then on expenditure side, they mentioned about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then they came to other recommendations. When they finished, they calculated, and for every recommendation, they had a specific amount government could save. And if you want, I can give you the names, the numbers. But when they finished, in that document, in the summary, they said that they believe that government can make. Let me read that portion. That government can make cuts up to 83 or can save up to 83 billion. Yes, it says these measures proposed above, per the estimate of the IBF, yield a net savings of 83.5 billion. The IBF holds the position that the above recommendations are competent enough to urgently address the fiscal challenges and enable us to reach the desired 55% debt to GDP target proposed to the IMF. Your director, who announced the debt exchange, signed off this document. So the feeling is that government's interpretation of burden sharing is for we to just tighten our belt, and whilst you do the minimum.
Okay, Bernard, I understand you. Understand where you are coming from, but I just want you to go through I don't have the budget in front of me, but I just want us to go through the budget briefly. When you take compensation alone is how much? It's close to about 50 billion. You take your interest payment. Interest payment is how much? 52 or so billion. When you look at the goods and services component, that is what the ministries, departments, and agencies use in pursuing implementing the budget to make sure we achieve the target or to help in the national development agenda. It's 6.9 billion. It's 6.9 billion. And when you look at our capital expenditure, it's less than 10 billion. So then just these two, compensation and interest payment, is taking more than 60-70% of the whole appropriation bill. So that is why we saw it necessary to do something about our debt. And so we had to restructure the debt.
Yeah, but honorable.
Yes.
For example, give me. I'm commenting on what you said. You said, for example, the capital expenditure. One of the recommendations of the bondholders, which Mr. Ackes signed to, was that instead of increasing the capital expenditure level as you have done in the 2023 budget, just maintain the 2022 capital expenditure level by reducing the non-ABFA, MDA, and foreign finance capex provisions by 50%. And if you did that, you would save 10 billion. But when I look at your capex for 2022, your capex for 2023 is higher. So here you are saying that we are.
No, give me the figure.
No,
give me the figure.
No. They said you should the capex expenditure level for this year 2023 is higher than that for 2022. You've not reduced it.
By how much? Sometimes the difference is a billion or two. But
in an austerity period, why are you even raising capex in 2023? And that's not. It's not only that too.
Maybe we should explain to Ghanaians what capex is.
Yes,
it's the building of infrastructure, the building of the classrooms, the hospitals. And are we saying that at this moment? Yes, we understand we're in a tight situation. A road is cut off, and we can't touch it because this or that. Yes, there are certain things that we will have to continue to spend on. And these are some of the things we would continue to spend on. But the things that we can work on to make sure we make a drastic reduction is the interest payments and the principal payment of our debt. And that is what we seek to address, because that alone is about 53 billion. When you take that 53 billion out of the appropriation, you save quite a huge amount of money. So this is what we have to address. And then also we need to look at the inefficiencies in our compensation management, because compensation alone is more than about 50 billion. So these are some of the things that we should look at. And that is why we are coming up with the biometric is enforced, and we are making sure that we validate people we pay. So we are introducing efficiency measures as well as actually cutting down. Look at the goods and services component of government.
I'm honorable. See, for me, there are, again, I'm speaking on behalf of the public and the many. I'm coming. Let me finish that question. The many suggestions. For example, there have been calls for reviewing of government flagship programs. The president has flatly refused to do this.
No,
free
very
SHS
important. You are
and
right.
all. I mean, for me, if a government that is telling me that I should pay more taxes and that we should burden share
has this flagship program.
Well,
previously, NAPCO
the president was very clear. He says there will be no review of free SHS.
In the 2023, NAPCO is no more on the flagship program. Government has saved close to $1 billion. So it is not that government has refused to listen. NAPCO, which was one of government's flagship program, which had a budget of close to $1 billion, is no more on the budget. So government is listening.
No, but NAPCO expired though. NAPCO was not. My understanding of NAPCO was not. It was not a perpetual program. So NAPCO came to its sunset. Free SHS has not been reviewed. A lot of the government flagships are still on.
Saying that we are going to review not just free SHS. There are so many flagship programs that government is reviewing to bring about efficiency in the way we manage these things. And we believe once we review and bring about some level of efficiency, it will also reduce the cost. Government accepts that, yes, after 3 to 5 years of implementation of a particular policy, we need to sit back and look at it. Government hasn't refused to review free SHS. Government says, I will do that. And in doing that, we believe that it will come up with certain challenges and certain efficiencies and certain inefficiencies in the system that we may have to look at and address. We understand. Government is addressing the situation of reducing its flagship program. And we have seen that and when you compare the 2023 flagship program budget to 2022, there has been a cut of more than 20%. Yes, aside taking out NAPCO, there has been a reduction in the budget for the flagship program from 2022 to 2023. There's been about 20% reduction. So it is tough, but we are listening. And maybe you haven't felt the impact as we speak, but with time, we will all feel the impact. It is not that government has turned a blind eye or a deaf ear to what Ghanaians are saying. Government has reviewed the flagship program, and we have reduced it by 20%. You can compare 2022's budget of the flagship program to that of 2023.
Well, we could spend all day going through the various suggestions, but I urge you to revisit the individual bondholders recommendations.
Yes,
there were about 13 revenue recommendations, and there were about 7 expenditure recommendations, and there were other recommendations which amounted to 83 billion. And when I listened to the explanation for the 3 new tax bills, I don't see any of them in those, although the official of the ministry signed off to these. So the government's posture, position, and actions will definitely decide whether Ghanaians believe the burden sharing is just rhetoric or is actually happening in actuality.
2023 budget. And the 2023 budget was sent to Parliament in November. We received this document somewhere in February. So these taxes are taxes that were put in the budget way back in November. There has been a delay. Otherwise, this taxes should have kicked in right from January 2023. So it is not that they have written to us and we have refused to address those concerns they have raised. These are revenue bills that were with Parliament way back in November. It's been on the order paper. We have been to the Finance Committee. The report has been brought to the Chamber, but we haven't been able to pass it. So these are not new bills that we are introducing. No. They came
just finally
in 2023.
Finally, and thank you for your time. Finally, the minister had said in December, I think, that if we did not get an IMF deal by close of March, it would be disaster for the economy. Today is 23rd March. The IMF board had a meeting on Monday, and Ghana was not on the agenda. Indeed, finance minister is in China to discuss the restructuring. We haven't done the external restructuring. We've just finished the domestic, and I know that the restructuring is a prior action for the board approval. So the question is a 2-in-1. Is the economy going to collapse, assuming these bills fail? Because we don't know what the minority's position is on these 3 bills. If they decide to oppose it and it doesn't go through, and based on what finance minister told us in December, that if the IMF deal doesn't come in March and then the economy collapse, is the government saying that if you don't get this 4 billion approved by today, it means Armageddon for us?
No, Bernard, I don't think the finance minister said the economy will collapse. It will have direct consequences on us if we refuse to raise domestic revenue, to pursue our own development agenda. This one, you don't need anybody to tell you that. We need to raise revenue to pursue our agenda and to make sure we get the economy back on track in the interest of everybody, not just the minority or the majority. In the interest of all Ghanaians, we need to get the economy back on track. We have begun. There are certain things that we are still working on. Like you said, the external debt restructuring, we are still working on. Currently, the minister is in China, and we are making good progress. And so what we have to do as a country domestically to make sure we get ourselves prepared, that is what we should focus on. And it is part of the pursuing the revenue mobilization agenda is part of the commitment we ourselves as a country have made to make sure we raise our own revenue and reduce our reliance on debt. And so this is part of it. And we are hoping that if we should go through with this, and then we finish the external debt operations, we'll be in a good position to go to the IMF. And remember, we reached the staff level agreement in record time, and we were hoping that with the support of everybody, we will be able to also do same for.
So do you have the support of the minority on these 3 bills?
Bernard, I think you should be helping us, not you, but the media should be helping us, because this is our nation. This is the only country we have, and we are at a time where we need this to make progress. And so we are encouraging everybody to come on board. We believe the minority are on board, and because at the end of the day, it is one country, and we need to make sure we put all the measures in place to make this economy thrive, because this is what we have, and this is ours, and we are the only people who can make it better.
Thank you, Abena Osei Asare, Deputy Minister for Finance and MP for Etiwa East. Lots of comments, a lot of different groups want to react. Indeed, whilst I was doing the interview, I believe a number of affected entities, particularly for the growth and stabilization levy, wanted to react. In fact, the 3 levies, there's another one that would affect some other companies. So, for example, the excise duty amendment will address beverage companies quite severely, and they are also already captured in the growth and stability levy. So now the excise amendment bill is to amend the Excise Duty Act of 2014 to revise the excise tax rate for cigarettes and other tobacco products to conform with ECOWAS protocols. Now, the bill will also increase the excise duty in respect of wine, malt, drinks, and spirits, and impose excise duty on sweetened beverages and electronic cigarettes and electronic liquids, and increase revenue. Now, apart from mineral water and malt drinks, all other sweetened beverages, including processed fruit juice, do not attract excise duty. So this bill, Act 878, which seeks to amend which is to be amended, Act 2014 Act 878, is to impose excise duties on these sweetened beverages. So those of you who like your sweet Fanta and those things, which will increase the excise duty on mineral water and malt drinks. Spirits have a higher alcohol content compared to other beers, but the excise duty on spirits is lower than that of beer. So this law is trying to raise the tax on spirits as well. Sky, the reason that I sort of I'm a bit restrained in the interview, because the government's posture throughout this period, I recall, it's always been flipped. Like, we won't go to IMF. They don't have anything good for us. They've gone. There will be no haircuts. There are haircuts. We'll get an IMF deal by March. If we don't, the economy will collapse. Now the economy will collapse. We don't get an IMF deal. Do you understand? We have E-levy. We don't need IMF. We have E-levy. We still need IMF. So it's a bit of, it's exhausting. And also because the government has not, so the minister is saying, well, let's come together. Let's support them. People came to the government and said, look, call a Citi type meeting. Bring everybody on board. Come. They said, no, you're not going to do that. So almost all the things that people have, including the opposition, have asked you to do prior to all this calamity, you said you wouldn't do it. Review. I remember there was a day we interviewed the Minister for Information. There's going to be a big meeting in Peduasi, and he said all flagships are on the table. Next morning, no flagships are on the table. All the flagships are not going to be reviewed. You get, so it's like this is I want to use the word intransigence. Okay, so now you're saying we should come and now support for this to go through. Okay. It's brinkmanship for me. It's almost like they always wait for the last minute for things to get out of hand. Then they come back and then they say, oh, the media should help.
Bernard.
Anyway, I'm trying to have somebody on. Who do I have? And I go for it.